Oh, yeah, Linda, Kinsey. Yeah, West Baeta. It means white bear woman. I was born at IHS at Fort Belknap, October 4th, 1960. Aaniiih, Grovat. My mother is Dorothy Main Kinsey, Aaniiih, and my father is Robert Kinsey. My paternal grandparents were named Amelia and John Kinsey. They were immigrants from Norway and Sweden. And then my maternal grandparents were Thomas Main and May Filestale. I grew up being very proud of Aaniiih, being Aaniiih, and heard lots of stories about the past and the resiliency that because both of my great grandparents were smallpox survivors, and so I'm pretty proud of the resiliency. But yet, some of the stories I've heard about, like relocation, boarding school, that's got me motivated to help, with trauma issues. I went 12 years to Harlem Public. It was okay. I don't think I had any major issues there. A few here and there, but yeah, we went to school, finished school, and all was good. Mostly Aaniiih. My grandmother was, and my mother were first language speakers, but my grandmother went to boarding school, at age 7. And then my mom went to boarding school at age 5. And so when my grandmother came home from boarding school, um, I think in the late 1900s, she reverted back to speaking Aaniiih. So at home, that's all she spoke, mostly. So I heard it growing up because she lived with us since I was about 4th grade. A little bit in Dakota, going to feeds and ceremonies and stuff. Well, actually, kind of a lot, yeah. Oh gosh, summertimes it was fun. I grew up at the agency. Well, lived in Hayes till about 4 with my grandmother, and it seemed to be, she didn't have electricity or running water in her cabin that she lived in, kind of by where Martin's store is now, and it just seemed peaceful, I guess, and quiet. And then we moved to the agency so my older brother could go to grade school there, and so I was about 4.5. And then growing up, I just remember good times in the summer riding our bikes, going down to the Milk River Bridge down there to swim and fish. And winters were way harder, way more snow. And then, I don't know, just more family gatherings, I guess. My mom's house was kind of a gathering place for her whole family. She had 11 brothers and sisters, so we gathered a lot there, and then would go to Hazen Lodgepole where my aunts and uncles were. So a lot more family time. I did more after the mid 70s because I guess I didn't really know it for sure, but it kind of correlates with the Indian Religious Freedom Act. Way more ceremonies in the mid 70s, but a few here and there, mainly like memorial feeds, just gatherings that I didn't go to my first sweat lodge until I was 17. At my uncle's place. I believe they said he had one of the first sweat lodges after religious freedom passed. So, yeah, probably 17 on way more ceremonies. Yep, my mother was raised at boarding school, St. Paul's Mission, so she was quite the Catholic. So we went to lots of church. But I was able to blend it both. I blend both of those. I do both half and half, and they started this healing, for Catholic Church boarding school survivors and families, and uh, in Great Falls, Tikawita conference, and that's been really, really, I guess, healing, and I thought kind of thoughtful, and you could speak out about, what you saw, what you heard, as far as your parents being Catholic boarding school survivors. So it was good to be able to talk about it and, hear from others across the state about things like that. So I'm still able to, take the best of both of those, and, I kind of leave out the bad. Yes, I believe the first powwow at Fort Belknap, or I'm trying to remember if the first location was out at Rodeo or where it's at now. I remember for attending that first powwow in the early '60s, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, we were quite the powwow people growing up, and still. I've been in Helena for 10 years now, but other than that, I've lived pretty much at Fort Belknap at home, and I left because it was getting hard. The tribal government had transitioned the year, and I was in a leadership role at the Chemical Dependency Center. I was the director and worked hard for, we were just about ready to open a recovery home there, which is, was I thought would really be beneficial to our people, and recovering from substance abuse and trauma and things. And the incoming chairman, um, and most of his leadership, and for sure the CAO, were somehow um, weird about it. And I had lost my son about a year and a half earlier, and I just couldn't. I just decided I didn't want to work for tribal government anymore after working there for about 30 years. So I got a job in Helena, and it was kind of scary to move off the res and to, be alone and all that. So I ended up living in Helena for 10 years now. For sure, access to ceremonies. At home, I had a sweat lodge right in my back door, for many, many years. And, I could access uh, things like that for, pretty much once a week or so. And then that was the biggest thing that I feel like I really lost, is access to ceremonies. And of course, my grandchildren and all my families that's still at home. And, I have 17. Well, I have 14 grandchildren and three great grandchildren. So, and I have some of them with me here in Helena, but it's just that loss of daily, um, seeing my family. That was the biggest impact. And then just different, running into different, shocking that some of the non-natives here, and even some of the natives, are not, were not really, didn't really understand reservation life, I guess. And it's still surprising sometimes. So, I kind of take advantage of it being here, and not really being a bridge builder, but kind of, building bridges by telling people about my experiences living on the reservation. I really don't run into too many people that grew up on a reservation here in Helena. Well, there's good and there's bad. Access to stores and pretty good access to shopping. Traffic isn't the best. It's like way different than Harlem or Hayes or Lodgepole, but lots more traffic. More accessibility to healthcare and specialty care in regards to mental health, substance abuse, a lot more access. But like at home, everybody and you're pretty friendly with everybody, and here it's not like that. There is some pockets of friendliness here, but it's just not like at home where everybody visits and but then I also feel like there's a lot less drama here. Like little daily picky drama things, so I find that's less. I think I really support the idea of having an off-member tribal council member, for both tribes. I support that idea. How the inner workings of that would be up for discernment and things, but I think that having a representative that directly is assigned to off reservation, I think would help. Maybe coordinate services here, listen to more people off res. And then I don't know if they've ever officially surveyed the elders or the even off reservation people, but I think that would give some sense of maybe assessing needs, maybe an off reservation needs assessment, a formal one, or even an informal one. I mean, with technology, we could have quarterly off reservation meetings even without a representative. If somebody could coordinate that, just giving us a say and giving us a support and input as far as our health and community, and even offering resources that off reservation members may be having more access to. I often think I'm nearing retirement age, and I really miss my grandchildren, and I often think about that. I haven't made any plans yet, but housing, I guess, would be the probably primary concern for me, and that would probably be the only concern. Yeah. I have concerns over the treaty language. The treaty with the original treaty, the water compact, as you probably know, was directly with Aaniiih tribes, and so, but the water compact does include the whole reservation, and so I mean both tribes, but I'm pro and mainly pro for it. But there's some concerns that I think some people brought up, original rights and things like that. And I guess I don't know, I didn't really read the ins and outs or the specifics of it, but I really disagree with them taking out the Grinnell agreement portion. I just think that's it could have been hopefully supported in negotiating maybe more urgently or strongly. But like I said, I guess I'm not an expert on that the current water compact as it stands. So, but I think it would provide some resources and I hope support, in the long run if it were passed. That was quite the one of the instances of historic trauma. It never should have happened. It was somewhat fraudulent, and I often go in that Grinnell Agreement area, which is off Reservation and Pig Medicine, and it's like it's really an abundant place for all kinds of uses. Especially, there's lots of good herbs and medicines there, and it's such a beautiful place. And it was really, really, really. I really think fraudulent. Taking advantage of when our people, mostly Aaniiih in that area, southern area of the reservation, were really down at their worst. And it's example of the federal government's greed and taking advantage, of our Indigenous people when they're down. And so it was really a bad move as far as our people here. Oh, I could just think of maybe three people. I mean, there's a lot. I've been really fortunate to have a really large family. All my aunts helped raise me. I was raised pretty traditionally by my grandmother, and my mother was also there. But I would say my grandmother was the one that influenced me the most, and just because of her resilience, growing up in boarding school, coming home and raising a large family, and um, her strength and her faith. And my grandfather, Tom Main, he passed away about a year and a half before I was born. But still have some of his speeches when he was tribal leader, and just his eloquence and his verbiage and his again, resilience too. And I just see lots of articles about his leadership. And his name was Bob Tailbear. My son is named after him, and I just have a lot of respect for his intelligence. I guess he had a eighth grade education, and somehow or the other he eluded boarding school, so he was able to retain language, traditions. Being raised by his grandfather, the boy Lambo. And so I just really respect his. He was a translator, and I've read some of his translations where he translated for some of our grandparents, and our elders that didn't speak English, and just that worldview that of being able to retain that Indigenous worldview, from before white contact. So I just really admired him, even though I didn't meet him. It definitely should be turned back to the tribe. I don't know that if the Catholic Church would have the resources to turn it back into a school, but it sounds like not, because the Jesuits are gone, from our area. So I don't know. And the shortage of priests and shortage of teachers and whatnot. And I just think they should fight harder for it to be turned back to the tribe and to be used. It's going to dilapidate, as years go by, where it's probably still in pretty good shape now, but it can't just sit. I think that it could be used for elderly housing, or it could be used for a museum. There's many things that it could probably be used for. I guess just to really have the discernment of the people and the leadership, see what could be done to be more assertive on being able to get that back. Well, what comes to mind is, my mother prayed every morning. I used to hear her praying in Aaniiih, and I understood some of it. And so I asked her to tell me what she was saying, And she said, "Well, I just say what my grandfather used to say. He prayed every morning," she said. And her grandfather she was talking about was uh, Lone Fly, and old Grandpa Lone Fly. And she said he'd winter or somewhere, any kind of weather, he'd open the door and he'd pray. She said in Indian, and I said, "Well, what did he say?" And she said, he prayed for, and he'd make us sit quiet. We can't move. We have to just sit there while he's praying. And and did you know? She said, "Did you know he prayed for you before you were even born?" I heard him pray for his grandchildren. I heard him, I heard him cry, and I heard him ask for help because, or pitiful, that's what she said. And he really had a lot of faith in the future, but he was really sad. She said at that time, this would have been about in the late 20s and early 30s, where it was really having a hard time. People were just recovering from a smallpox epidemic in the early 1900s, and he had lost most of his family, her grandfather, and he was a smallpox survivor. And she said he used to really cry, but at the same time, she used to tell me that that gives me a lot of hope when she told me that, and I always think of that she prayed for you before he prayed for you before you were even born. And so my son was a tribal leader years back, and she got to say the inauguration prayer, and that's what she told the story. She said that your grandparents, Aaniiih and Nakota, prayed for you before you were even born. And so I just really like that story. And then another one was when they were having the Catholic Church. She said that all the boarding school students went to that little shrine. It's that little tiny shrine before the church, and they were having Easter service. And they were talking about the Trinity, the Easter service, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And she said her grandpa didn't speak English, so he asked her to tell him what the priest was talking about. And so she tried to explain, the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And she said he was just confused. So he replied back to her, so these people have one God and three heads. it just speaks to me of the confusion and the, spiritual abuse, that when Catholics came in, and they just didn't, and some of them stood fast. They wouldn't go to Catholic, and a lot of my mom's family did, but a lot of them didn't too, the old school people. So I like those two stories that she used to tell us. Oh gosh, I just think to really hear stories of the past, and if you don't have people that tell them to you, find them, because there's still people out there. We have some books that the education department, published, and I think they're still available to read those Aaniiih stories, war stories of the white clay people is one that comes to mind, and to just research all you can about the past, because it'll give you resilience for today and hope, and I think like the medicine wheel is really a good example of trying to balance off, mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical issues in your life, and to try to keep as well as you can, so we could help the next generation also survive, be resilient, and be thriving, and just to be hopeful, and not to ever forget about where you came from, no matter what the story is, and just to go forward so you could enjoy today as well.